Michael Oren, for many years the ambassador of Israel to the United States, former deputy minister in the Netanyahu government. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm great, Hugh.
I am enjoying The Night Archer every night, but we're going to talk about that next week because, of course, the events of this week are so important. I want to begin this way. Yesterday, a political commentator from L.A., a big YouTube commentator, his name is Brian Tyler Cohen, tweeted out, I can't get over the entire Trump team thinks that a peace agreement between countries that have never been at war means they've achieved peace in the Middle East. What's next? Peace between the United States and Canada? What's your response to that, Dr. Oren?
Oh, God, it's just nothing. First of all, it's actually wrong. Both the UAE and Bahrain waged very severe and punishing economic war against Israel in the oil boycott of 1974. You and I are both old enough to remember it.
Yes.
As a result of that boycott, it changed Europe's attitude to us. It caused dozens of African countries to cut off relations with Israel. It's just not true. They were in a state of war with us.
Eric Erickson also...
That's a lie.
It is a lie. Eric Erickson also wrote about growing up in the UAE. They scissored every reference of Israel out of their textbooks. They waged the general war that the Arab world has waged against Israel since 1948, but now no more. It is a huge deal, but the left can't say so.
The left can't say so. They're saying that the latest thing is they're saying it's peace and not normalization. That's the latest thing. It's really funny because as if somehow that normalization comes from peace. What we've learned from our peace treaties with Jordan, with Egypt, you can have peace, but there's no normalization. Normalization is 10 times better than just a peace accord. Well, and the fact that the people from Bahrain and the UAE are really going to flood in here and establish business relations and tourist relations and dialogues, that's real peace.
I also heard a criticism from our mutual friend Chuck Todd yesterday that the deal was a little transactional in his view. He's feeling bad. I'm going to talk to Chuck next hour that he thought the deal was too transactional. I don't quite know. I'll ask him what it means, but I don't understand that criticism either. Indeed, Dr. Oren, it seems to me a lot of people don't want to admit this is a major breakthrough.
They don't, and it is, and it changes everything, and it's total precedent for the Middle East. And every subsequent peace arrangement between Israel and the Arabs will look like this, and not like the peace between Egypt and Israel, and Jordan and Israel, which were maybe less transactional and were sort of fuzzy and warm, but didn't produce real peace between peoples. I'll take transactional peace that produces real normalization over fuzzy peace that produces very, very cold and often hostile relations any day.
Now, Dr. Oren, what do you expect will happen next? Are there more countries that will fall shortly into the Abraham Accord, or will it require the reelection of Donald Trump to make that happen?
Well, I can only say this. Again, I never want to get involved in internal American politics, but I'm just going on what former Vice President Biden has said, what former Senator Harris has said, that they will renew the Iran nuclear deal and that they will restore much of the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians, okay? I can't think of two measures that would be more effective in stopping any peace process dead in its tracks than those two.
All right, let me play for you John Kerry at the Brookings in 2016 when he was Secretary of State. Cut number 2.
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we can work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace.
So, Dr. Oren, I know he's your friend, and he's been a welcome guest on this show and is welcome to come back. But what do you make of Secretary Kerry? That was only 2016.
Well, to his no, I'm going to say wrong, wrong, wrong. Huh. Think of a ball in a pinball machine going wrong, 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 wrong. John Kerry also said that if Israel didn't make peace, we would be more isolated in the world on steroids. And Israel is less, of course, isolated today than any time in its history. He also said that technology would make it harder for Israel to defend itself. Tell that to the people who made the Iron Dome. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And it's difficult. It's difficult for the members of this peace industry, which is just far more than John Kerry. It's much of the media and academia and think tanks in Washington, to say that all of their assumptions about the peace process was wrong, that the Arab-Israeli conflict was the core conflict. The core of that conflict was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The core of that conflict was the settlement issue in Jerusalem. All wrong. All wrong. And it's difficult. And it's difficult for them to say, hey, this is terrific. This is really what we've always wanted. But, they don't like the fact that Bibi's done it, Trump's done it,
It is what it is. Let me close by asking you, Dr. Oren, and we'll talk about the Night Archer next week, your terrific collection of stories. If the Israel voted soon, would this help Bibi Netanyahu, or is this now already factored into the polling in Israel?
It's already factored, and it didn't give them a major bump because we're about to become the only country in the world to go into a second lockdown. That's tomorrow. And the mood in the country is not jubilant, I got to tell you.